My daughter-in-law gave her mother the master bedroom and gave me a couch with a gift tag still dangling. They thought I'd be grateful. I co-owned the house. 30 days later, her mother was gone, the locks were changed, and the sheriff signed off. No shouting, no drama, just documentation. She gave me a couch, I gave her the countdown. Wait, before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. She smiled like she was doing me a favor. The couch creaked like it already knew the insult. Evelyn stood in the center of her son's open-concept living room, suitcase still in hand, and watched as Heather, her daughter-in-law, held out a folded fleece blanket like an offering. It was powder blue with silver snowflakes, not exactly the kind of thing one kept out past January. The price tag still clung to one corner like an afterthought. Heather's voice was syrupy. I know it's not ideal, but the house is just a little tight right now. The words floated out casually, rehearsed and unbothered, like Evelyn was just another UPS delivery in need of temporary shelter. She glanced around. The couch, pale gray and firm, sat awkwardly against a wall of windows. No curtain, no privacy, no apology. Evelyn took the blanket without a word and set her bag down beside the armrest. Oh, and the guest bathroom's got all your things in a basket, Heather added. Mom brought her diffuser, so we had to shift some stuff around. Evelyn's eyes narrowed slightly. Your mom? Before Heather could answer, a laugh rang down the hallway. Then Delia appeared, perfectly at ease, barefoot, wearing a robe Evelyn recognized as one she had gifted Nathan and Heather for their anniversary 5 years ago. Delia's hair was wrapped in a towel turban, her face freshly moisturized. Did someone say my name? She called brightly, then stepped into view. Heather beamed. Mom's already settled in the master. She got in early to help with the twins' schedule while you're here. You know how much they love her bedtime stories? Evelyn looked toward the staircase. The master bedroom, the room she had helped finance, the one with the ensuite bathroom and fireplace she had spent hours helping Nathan choose tile for back when he still called her for advice. Nathan finally appeared, walking in from the kitchen with a paper towel in one hand and a juice box in the other. He handed the box to one of the kids off camera, then met Evelyn's gaze for a fraction of a second before lowering it. Hey, Mom, he said gently, brushing past. Thanks again for being flexible. Evelyn nodded once, slowly. Her tone was even. Always. The moment hung for a beat longer than it should have, then dissolved as Heather clapped her hands. All right, who wants dessert? I made that dairy-free peach crumble everyone pretends to like. Hours later, the house quieted. The twins had gone to bed, the kitchen was dark, and the fireplace had been turned off for the night. Evelyn lay on the couch with the scratchy blanket pulled up to her chest. A throw pillow did its best to pretend it was a real one. The air was cold, not enough to see her breath, but enough to stiffen her spine. She stared at the ceiling fan. It rotated slowly above her, blades whispering in a rhythm that sounded like disappointment. On the nearby armchair sat her small handbag. Inside it, her phone buzzed faintly with a new notification. She reached for it, cradling it under the blanket like a secret. A new photo had been posted. Heather and Delia, cheek to cheek in the master bedroom. Behind them, the custom headboard Evelyn helped design. The caption read, My real queen is home. Family first. Evelyn didn't blink. She didn't zoom in. She simply set the phone down on her chest, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan again. The blade seemed slower now, each rotation like a heavy sigh that wasn't hers. She thought about all the times she had said nothing, at dinners, at holidays, when Heather rolled her eyes at her suggestion to use cloth napkins, when she gently corrected one of the twins, and Heather had said, Let's not confuse them, Nana. She had accepted those moments like mosquito bites, small, annoying, but not worth the energy. But this wasn't a bite, it was a blueprint. Slowly, she unlocked her phone again, scrolled through her contacts, paused on one, Gerald Attorney. She tapped the name and typed just one sentence. Is the house still in my name? She texts her lawyer with one line. Is the house still in my name? They gave me the couch. I gave them the down payment and the deed. Evelyn sat at the edge of the guest bathroom tub, the only quiet corner she could find in the house, with her phone glowing in her palm and her reflection in the medicine cabinet, watching her like an old friend too polite to comment. Gerald hadn't responded yet, but he would. He always did. He was steady like that, quiet, dependable, no taste for family drama, just facts and contracts. She liked that about him. Outside the door, someone knocked lightly, one of the twins asking for toothpaste. Evelyn responded gently, "Check the bottom drawer, sweetheart." The footsteps padded away, and she was alone again. She opened her notes app, scrolling down to a file simply titled House History. She'd started it back when Nathan and Heather were first house hunting, almost a decade ago. She hadn't thought about it in years, but now the record read like a breadcrumb trail back to her forgotten presence in the foundation of this home. 2013. Down payment wired, $128,000. Agreement, co-ownership, 49% share in name. Notarized at closing. Property, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms in Evergreen Oaks. Appraised at $427,000. She still remembered the day she signed the paperwork. Heather had thanked her with a bottle of wine Evelyn didn't drink, and a scented candle that smelled like artificial gratitude, lavender and something synthetic. Nathan had said, "You'll always have a home here, Mom." Heather had smiled thinly and said, "Of course you'll always be family." And now, here she was, sleeping beneath a throw blanket that still had a barcode dangling from the seam. Evelyn searched the parcel number on the assessor's site. Her name was still there. Evelyn Margaret Langston, 49% owner. No mention of Heather. She exhaled. The next morning, sunlight filled the living room. Delia passed in a silk robe, tea in hand. Heather blended something green in the kitchen. Evelyn stepped onto the patio with black coffee, welcomed by the cold concrete. She called her lawyer. "Can I still act as co-owner?" "Yes," Gerald said. "You hold 49%. No lease? Then you can issue a 30-day notice to vacate. No explanation needed." Evelyn nodded, eyes on the frost-covered lawn. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was asking about leverage. Evelyn didn't reply immediately. The sound of a lawnmower somewhere nearby hummed through the quiet. Gerald's voice returned. "Evelyn, you okay?" She took a slow sip of her coffee. The bitterness grounded her. "I'm fine," she said. "I just remembered something I should never have forgotten." "What's that?" "That roofs don't just stand on love. Someone has to pay for the nails." There was a long pause on the line, then Gerald said, with the weight of permission she didn't know she needed, "If you wanted them out, you could legally give 30 days notice. No explanation required." Gerald replies, "If you wanted them out, you could legally give 30 days notice, no explanation required." It was her house, at least in part, but there wasn't a seat for her. Evelyn stood in the doorway of the dining room, watching the table come to life like a stage performance she hadn't been invited to. Crystal glasses clinked against polished wood. Linen napkins sat folded like origami birds beside each plate. The head of the table was already occupied, Delia comfortably seated, swirling her wine like it was her throne's chalice. Heather flitted about the room with the energy of a hostess playing to her audience. "Delia, do you want to open with the toast?" she asked, placing a rosemary sprig atop a napkin with practiced precision. "Everyone else, just grab a seat anywhere." Evelyn glanced around. The seats were full. She looked again. Not a single open chair, not even the folding kind they pulled out during holidays. What remained was a stool from the breakfast nook, half tucked against the sideboard like an afterthought. Nathan caught her eye but quickly turned to refill someone's water glass. Heather, noticing the pause, smiled and nodded toward the stool. "Oh, Evelyn, sorry, we ran out of room at the main end. Do you mind grabbing that little one? You'll be closest to the salad." She gestured to the bowl like it was compensation. Delia laughed lightly from her position at the head. "You know what they say, older folks like routine. I always get this spot at Heather's dinner parties." Evelyn walked toward the stool, her steps measured. She picked it up and placed it beside the table, just off to the side, angled as though unsure it belonged. She sat. The cushion was thin, and she had to reach to pull the salad bowl closer. The clatter of forks and conversation filled the room. Someone complimented the roast. Someone else asked about the new school calendar. Nathan shared a short, forgettable story about a co-worker. And then Evelyn spoke. "I remember when Nathan was little," she said calmly, "and he used to line up his peas in groups of 3. Wouldn't eat them unless they were even," Heather interrupted mid-smile. "What she means is, Nathan was a very particular eater." The room chuckled politely. Delia nodded. "He still is." I've had to remind Heather not to oversalt his eggs. Evelyn turned to Heather, eyes steady. No, what I meant was what I said. Heather's smile froze. Right, of course. The conversation moved on. Evelyn didn't. She silently counted down from 10, each number anchoring her in place. Then she smiled, a small, practiced thing that meant, "You think I don't see you, but I do." After dinner, she cleared her own plate and walked into the kitchen. Heather followed, carrying a tray of empty wine glasses. "Thanks for being flexible," Heather said breezily. "You know how hard it is juggling two moms under one roof. We're trying to make space for everyone." Evelyn wiped her hands with a dish towel. "It's good that you're trying." Heather placed the glasses into the sink a bit too hard. "We're doing our best. If there's something you want, just say it." Evelyn turned and faced her fully, eyes sharp but voice gentle. "I did say it. You just corrected it in front of everyone." Heather blinked, momentarily speechless. Then she offered a tight laugh. "Let's not make this a thing." Evelyn nodded. "Let's not." Evelyn retrieved her phone and began drafting. To Gerald Kessler, attorney at law, subject draft notice of co-tenant termination. Please prepare a formal 30-day cohabitation termination letter addressed to the current occupants of my jointly owned residence. The words weren't just legal, they were a line in the sand. Later, when the house was empty, Evelyn adjusted the thermostat from 74 to 70. In the pantry, she rotated one quinoa label backward, moved the cinnamon to the top shelf, and swapped the display olive oil with the half-used store brand. It wasn't sabotage, it was a message. They called it their home. She still had the paperwork. By evening, the thermostat had crept back up to 74. The cinnamon was back on the lower shelf, and the pantry labels were even more aggressively organized. Heather had added color-coded stickers. Evelyn said nothing. Later that week, she poured herself a small glass of red wine, just enough to soften the edges of the evening, and sat at the kitchen counter while Heather unpacked groceries. The silence was comfortable until it wasn't. Heather reached into the pantry and immediately paused. She pulled out a jar of lentils and held it up like it was evidence. "Did you move this?" Evelyn didn't look up. "I thought it made more sense with the other dry beans." Heather's voice turned crisp. "Mom's used to certain things being in specific places. It just helps her feel settled. Could you just not?" Evil Molyneux set her glass down slowly. "I lived in this house before she even knew what street it was on." Heather blinked, smiled tightly. "Yes, but we've made it a real home now, and routines matter when people get older." Evelyn smiled back, her face neutral. "They do." That night, Evelyn sat on the couch, the same stiff couch she was still expected to sleep on, and opened a small leather notebook she kept tucked inside her overnight bag. The cover was embossed with a gold monogram. EML. At the top of a fresh page, she wrote, "Co-tenant diary, quiet disrespect entry number 1, thermostat adjusted to 74, lowered to 70, reset again by evening. Entry number 2, pantry rearranged." Heather corrected it with a comment about Delea's preferences. Entry number 3, Heather requested I just not, documented tone, dismissive, layered in politeness. She wrote with the same precision she once used to track Nathan's preschool attendance, to balance her household budget, to catalog her late husband's prescriptions. There was comfort in the clarity of ink. The next morning, Evelyn stood at the edge of the master bedroom doorway. Delea's perfume lingered faintly in the air, floral and sharp, like gardenia mixed with entitlement. The door was cracked open just enough for her to glimpse the edge of the four-poster bed, the same one Evelyn had helped Nathan pick out on a rainy afternoon 7 years earlier. She didn't step in. She didn't need to. That wasn't her room. Not anymore. Evelyn opened her laptop and booked a will update with her estate planner. In the notes, remove Heather Langston from all beneficiary clauses. The confirmation pinged seconds later. She leaned back on the couch. The fleece blanket, still scratchy, stayed folded beside her. She didn't need it. She gave me a throw blanket. I gave her a deadline. The next morning, Evelyn stood at the kitchen island. 3 documents lay beside her coffee. A notarized 30-day notice, a copy of the property title, a typed letter addressed to Nathan and Heather. She folded them neatly, sealed them in an ivory envelope, and placed it on the table. No raised voice, no drama, just precision, just timing. Heather waltzed into the kitchen wearing leggings and a slogan tee that read, Good vibes only. She opened the fridge with one hand and scrolled her phone with the other. Evelyn placed the envelope gently on the counter between them. Heather glanced up. What's this? Something I've been meaning to give you, Evelyn said evenly. Heather slid her manicured nail beneath the flap and scanned the first page. As her eyes moved, her posture shifted, subtle but unmistakable. The careless slouch turned rigid. She flipped to the second page, then looked up. You're evicting us? Evelyn took a calm sip of her coffee. No, I'm terminating a shared cohabitation agreement. I still own 49% of this home. The law allows me to give 30 days' notice. It's all in writing. Heather blinked. You can't evict your own son. I'm not evicting my son, Evelyn said. I'm evicting my co-owners, you and your mother included. Choose another address. The silence broke as Delia entered from the hallway, robe belted tightly, holding a yogurt parfait and her usual morning entitlement. What's going on? Heather passed her the papers. Delia skimmed them quickly, then scoffed. Oh, how vindictive. Is this about the master suite, about a blanket? Evelyn turned to her fully now, eyes clear. No, Delia. This is about dignity. Mine. Nathan came up the stairs moments later, earbuds still in, wearing athletic shorts and confusion. What's happening? Heather tossed the notice onto the counter. Your mother is evicting us. Nathan stared at Evelyn. Tell me that's not true. She stepped forward and handed him the second copy. It's not personal, Nathan. It's practical. The agreement was violated a long time ago. I've documented everything. You've all had time to adjust. Now you'll have 30 days more. He scanned the letter, his brow furrowed. You didn't talk to me about this? I tried, she said, for months. You were always too tired, too distracted, too unwilling. Heather folded her arms. This is embarrassing. Not nearly as embarrassing as being treated like a house guest in a home I helped buy, Evelyn replied. Her tone didn't rise, it didn't need to. The truth had its own gravity. Later that evening, the air had shifted. No one spoke to her directly. Delia kept to the master suite, slamming drawers louder than necessary. Heather typed furiously on her laptop from the dining room table, muttering about legal gray areas. Nathan took the twins to the park and returned late. Evelyn sat on the couch, still hers, still uncomfortable, holding a manila envelope marked with her attorney's name, Gerald Kessler, Esquire. Inside was a final confirmation letter, one meant for legal clarity. She wrote Nathan's name on the front and walked quietly down the hall to his office. The door was slightly ajar. He sat inside, hunched over his desk, rubbing the bridge of his nose. She didn't step in. She didn't need to. She left the envelope on his chair. As she walked away, her steps felt lighter, not because anything was over, but because something had finally started. The rumor reached Evelyn before her morning coffee. Heather had told the HOA she was confused about the deed, hinting at memory issues. By noon, the concerned texts began, soft check-ins, polite offers to help with paperwork. Heather wasn't arguing. She was rewriting Evelyn, one whisper at a time. Evelyn didn't flinch. She called her neighbor Mara. Could you send me the HOA mailing list? She asked. I'd like to share a small clarification. That same afternoon, Nathan received a formal letter from Evelyn's attorney confirming their move-out date. Heather tried to paint her as senile. The HOA president sent Evelyn flowers. Within the hour, she composed a letter, not emotional, not defensive, just factual. To whom it may concern, as co-owner of the property at 1437 Briarwood Lane, I wanted to proactively share clarification regarding recent changes in occupancy. Per legal records and the original deed attached, I retain 49% ownership of the home. All legal actions, including a formal 30-day cohabitation termination notice, have been conducted through appropriate legal counsel. If there are concerns about my well-being, please know that I am of sound mind in full possession of my legal rights and have acted solely to restore balance and privacy within a shared home environment. Kind regards, Evelyn M. Langston. She attached a PDF of the deed and a brief statement from her attorney stamped with the firm's letterhead. The email was sent to 23 neighbors. By the next morning, 6 had replied. Every single one of them supportive. You've handled this with class, Evelyn. So glad you're standing your ground. Heather always was strong-willed. If you ever want to join our Wednesday card group again, we'd love to have you back. Later, That afternoon, a small arrangement of tulips was delivered to the front porch. No note, just the card from the HOA for standing tall. Heather barely looked at Evelyn for 2 days. When she did, her smile was tight, brittle at the corners. But the silence wasn't retreat, it was recoil. On the third day, Heather's voice snapped across the kitchen like a dish hitting tile. "You've embarrassed this family." Evelyn calmly stirred her tea. "I clarified a legal matter. If that embarrassed anyone, that says more than I ever could." Heather shook her head. "You could have come to us privately." "I did," Evelyn said evenly. "You offered me a couch and a throw blanket. I responded with a deadline. You countered with rumors. I published proof." Heather opened her mouth, but no words came. She turned sharply and stormed down the hallway. The front door slammed moments later. Evelyn sipped her tea slowly, the heat curling against her palms. The quiet after Heather left wasn't peace. It was space. And space, for the first time in a long while, felt like something she'd earned. That night, as the sun lowered into an orange haze behind the trees, Evelyn sat in the sunroom with her journal. The leather cover had worn softer with use, the pages now peppered with entries. She flipped to a new one. Entry number 14, rumors spread, documentation shared, silence broken. Just as she closed it, her phone buzzed against the side table. A voicemail. She played it on speaker. Delea's voice came through, thick with indignation. "You just ruined your relationship with your son. I hope your pride is worth it." Evelyn didn't move, didn't replay the message. She simply stared out the window, the shadows stretching long across her garden. Because sometimes what ruins a relationship isn't the truth, it's how long the lie was allowed to live. Evelyn receives a voicemail from Delea. "You just ruined your relationship with your son. They added me to the group chat to control the narrative. I just kept the receipts." The group name blinked across Evelyn's phone screen as if trying to soften the blow, moving forward gracefully. The irony landed harder than any insult, created by Heather. Participants: Heather, Nathan, Delia, Evelyn. No grandchildren, no lawyers, just the four of them and a facade of civility. The new group chat lit up immediately. Heather: "Hi all, just creating a healthy space to move forward. Proposal: let mom stay through the holidays. She's decorated the kids' rooms and is helping at school. In January, we'll rotate rooms fairly. Nathan and I will cover any reshuffle expenses." Delia gave it a thumbs up. Nathan replied, "Seems reasonable. Let's not let this tear the family apart." No one mentioned Evelyn's co-ownership or the legal notice, or that holiday cheer doesn't override legal standing. Evelyn said nothing, just took screenshots, quietly, carefully. That evening, dinner was served like a staged peace treaty. Heather smiled too brightly. "Let's all eat together tonight. Feels like a time for unity." The rotisserie chicken was warm, the room wasn't. Delia was already seated at the head, of course, dabbing the corner of her mouth with a cloth napkin that Evelyn had bought years ago from a specialty shop downtown. Nathan pulled out a chair beside Delia for Evelyn. "We should try to be on the same page," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Heather's trying really hard." Evelyn sat down wordlessly. She poured herself water. The clink of the ice echoed like punctuation in the room's awkward quiet. Delia broke it. "So, Evelyn, did you see Heather's idea? I think it's beautifully balanced, generous." Heather smiled tightly. "We're trying to make space for everyone." Evelyn cut a carrot in half. "There already was space. You just chose not to see it." Delia opened her mouth, but Nathan raised a hand. "Let's just eat." They did, quietly, mechanically, with frozen smiles and loaded silence. Later, back on the couch that still served as her bed, Evelyn opened her phone again. The group chat showed unread messages. Heather: "Just checking in. Let's confirm by Friday. We need to move forward as a family." Delia: "It's hard to heal with so much tension. I think Evelyn needs time to reflect." Evelyn flipped open her notebook. Entry 15. Group chat created under false premise. Coercive tone. Compromise without legal basis. Recorded. She closed it, pulled a blanket over her lap, and exhaled into the silence. Her phone buzzed again. This time, not the group chat. A message from her granddaughter. "Grandma, what actually happened?" Evelyn stared at the screen, heart heavy. It wasn't the accusations that shook her, it was this question. Soft, honest. 3 days later, they sat together in a quiet cafe behind the bookstore. just mismatched mugs, soft jazz, and the girl who once whispered, "You're the only one who never yells." Evelyn hadn't planned a speech. She only planned to tell the truth. Her granddaughter, Malene, 16 going on 30, stirred her iced chai with too much ice, eyes darting from the tabletop to Evelyn's face and back again. Her voice was cautious but not cold. "So, what's really going on?" Evelyn folded her hands around her mug, the ceramic still warm. She didn't launch into it, she didn't rehearse it. She just started where it mattered. 10 years ago, I helped your parents buy the house. Paid almost half the down payment. It was in my name, too. Malene's brow furrowed. "Wait, but Mom said—" "I know what she said," Evelyn interrupted gently. "I'm telling you what happened." The teenager blinked, her face softened, curiosity overtaking the doubt. "I didn't live there at first," Evelyn continued, "but I always had that home in my name. I helped raise you in that kitchen. I picked out that fireplace, and then when I needed a place to stay, they gave me a couch." The word couch landed hard. Malene's lips pressed into a line. "No room?" she asked. "Oh, there were rooms. But your other grandma had already taken the master permanently, and I was told the rest were full. They gave me a blanket with a tag still on it. I wasn't asked. I was told." Malene was silent for a moment, then looked up sharply. "So all that stuff about you lashing out was a lie?" Evelyn smiled, but not with amusement. "Let's just say your parents told a version of the story that made their choices seem like the only ones. I let them for a while." The ice in Malene's cup cracked softly as it shifted. "You gave them the house?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "And they did that?" Evelyn shook her head slowly. "I didn't give it to them. I loaned it with love. But love has limits, even mine." For a long beat, neither of them spoke. The jazz faded into silence. Outside the cafe window, an orange leaf spiraled to the ground. Malene leaned back, her fingers still circling her straw. "You're calmer than I expected." "I'm not here to make you choose sides," Evelyn said. "I just wanted you to know, quietly, not through whispers or group chats." Malene looked down at her phone but didn't unlock it. "Everyone else thinks you just snapped out of nowhere." "I know." "And you're okay with that?" "I'm not okay with it," Evelyn said quietly. "But I'm not going to beg people to unlearn a lie they find convenient." An hour later, they hugged outside the cafe. Evelyn didn't expect anything more. She knew how family worked, especially in the gray areas between child and adult, truth and loyalty. But that evening, as Evelyn folded laundry on the living room couch, her phone buzzed. She glanced down at the notification. Malene posted a story. "Disrespect is expensive." White background, black font. No names, but everyone would read between the lines. Evelyn smiled faintly and returned to folding a towel that still smelled like lavender detergent. Because sometimes the loudest truth comes dressed in quiet. The granddaughter posts a vague but powerful quote, "Disrespect is expensive. They thought I wanted out. I offered to cut the house in half." It started with a brunch invitation Nathan left on the kitchen counter, handwritten like he thought a little effort would soften the coming proposition. "Just us, 10 a.m. Sunday, back patio. No Heather, no Delia. Just the son who hadn't truly looked her in the eye in weeks." Evelyn arrived on time, a linen scarf wrapped around her shoulders, coffee in hand. The sun was bright but not warm. The patio furniture creaked beneath her as she sat across from Nathan, who was already nervously poking at an untouched scone. He didn't waste time. "Look, Mom, Heather and I have been talking. We know this situation isn't ideal for anyone, so we want to make an offer." Evelyn said nothing, only nodded for him to go on. Nathan pulled a folded sheet of paper from his hoodie pocket. It was printed from a home template. No letterhead, no signature. She already knew what it was. "We'd like to buy out your share," he said, placing the paper gently on the table between them. "We've talked to a mortgage consultant. We think this is fair." She didn't reach for it. "And the number?" He hesitated. 200,000? Evelyn let the silence stretch long enough that the wind seemed to fill the space. "You think I'd sell my half of this house for less than the market price just to make things easier for Heather?" Nathan leaned forward. "It's not just about Heather, it's about the kids. Stability." Evelyn smiled without warmth. "You didn't seem too concerned about my stability when I was sleeping on a couch beside the thermostat." He exhaled sharply. I'm trying to fix this. No, Nathan, she said, finally picking up the paper. You're trying to patch a leak with paper towels. Let me show you what a real repair looks like. 2 days later, Evelyn met with her lawyer and a property assessor. She arrived prepared, printouts of zoning codes, a map of the property lot lines, and a proposal she'd spent the last 48 hours building with quiet, focused rage. Back at the house, she called for Heather and Nathan to join her in the living room. She set a folder on the coffee table between them, pages neatly labeled. I've declined your buyout, she said simply, but I am offering a different path. Heather narrowed her eyes. We're not open to compromise. Evelyn opened the folder. This isn't a compromise, it's an option. The deed remains legally split, but the property gets partitioned. 2 separate units, same lot. We split the yard, the driveway, utilities. You keep your half, I keep mine. Nathan rubbed his forehead. You can't just divide a house in 2. I can, she said, flipping to a page with zoning diagrams. And if you decline, then I'll be renting out my side to a long-term tenant. I already spoke to a traveling nurse agency. There's interest. Heather's voice cracked. You'd bring a stranger to live with our children? No, Evelyn said flatly. I'd bring a tenant to live in my half of a house you all thought I didn't have rights to. Heather stood abruptly. This is insane. Evelyn stood too, her voice calm and clear. What's insane is thinking generosity entitles you to permanent control. While Heather ranted upstairs on the phone, Evelyn sat quietly in the sunroom, uploading photos to the rental site her lawyer had recommended. Guest room, kitchenette, private entrance, title, quiet, sunlit unit in family neighborhood. She clicked publish. The next morning, watering her basil, Evelyn heard Heather's phone ring. What do you mean it's online? She what? She listed the house? Heather shouted. Evelyn smiled and snipped a leaf. At 6:42 a.m., Evelyn's phone buzzed with a message. Hi, Evelyn. I'm a traveling ICU nurse relocating for a 9-month contract. Loved your listing. I can pay 3 months up front. Background check ready. Kara L. They tried to push her out emotionally. She responded with a lease agreement. Evelyn read it twice, then once more, absorbing the words like they were warmth through cold tile. Her lips curled slightly, not in smugness, but in certainty. She replied within 5 minutes, polite and professional. Kara, thank you for your interest. I'll be available Thursday for a private showing. Please bring your documentation. The unit will be vacant in 10 days. E. Langston. By late afternoon, she had printed the inquiry and set it inside a file folder marked pending tenancy. When Nathan came upstairs to grab a snack before his next call, she spoke softly from the breakfast table. I had a serious offer come in today for the rental. Nathan paused, mid-reach toward a granola bar. Already? She nodded. A nurse, steady income, quiet. 3-month deposit up front. Nathan looked at her like someone reading a news alert he wasn't prepared for. You're actually going through with it? I told you my half was an option, she said, folding the folder shut. You passed. He didn't reply, just walked back downstairs with the granola bar unopened in his hand. That evening, after the kids were asleep, Evelyn placed the printed listing and Kara's message on the kitchen counter. Heather was scrubbing something already clean when she noticed the documents. What's this? She asked, still wielding the sponge like a shield. A qualified applicant, Evelyn said calmly, for the unit. Separate entrance, as noted. No shared space. Heather skimmed the papers. You're serious? I'm always serious when it comes to business and boundaries. Heather threw the sponge into the sink. Water splashed across the counter. You're not renting out part of our house to a total stranger, she snapped. This is where our children live. And it's where you had no problem leaving me on a couch for 6 weeks, Evelyn answered, unbothered. That's the beauty of ownership. It's legally mutual. Heather's face tightened, color rising up her neck. We'll sue. You're compromising the value of our home. You're being spiteful. Evelyn placed her hands lightly on the folder. Spite would be renting to someone just to irritate you. This, she tapped the folder, this is recovery. Financial, personal, legal. You don't get to tear this family apart and turn it into a duplex. I didn't tear it apart, Evelyn said, her voice still soft. You handed me a fleece blanket with a gift tag and called it hospitality. This is me responding like someone who knows what they're worth. Nathan didn't come up to mediate, not this time. Evelyn heard the muffled sound of the TV from the den. She didn't expect him to intervene. She didn't need him to. The next morning, Kara confirmed the appointment. By noon, Evelyn updated the listing to offer pending and emailed a PDF to her attorney for review. When Heather passed her in the hallway, she didn't speak. Her eyes, however, screamed everything Evelyn had waited weeks to hear. You weren't supposed to fight back. Later that evening, Evelyn brewed herself a cup of chamomile and took it to the sunroom, watching dusk settle over the yard she used to tend, by herself. The roses needed pruning. The hydrangeas had yellowed too soon. Heather appeared at the doorway, arms crossed, jaw set. "We'll call the zoning board," she said without preamble. Evelyn didn't even look up. "You have 10 days left," she said quietly, voice like stone wrapped in silk. "Use them wisely." Evelyn simply says, "You have 10 days left, use them wisely." They bluffed hard. I brought receipts. The envelope was hand-delivered on a Thursday, tucked in the screen door like a passive-aggressive apology. Thick paper, legal header, language intended to intimidate, petition to stay eviction due to familial hardship. Evelyn flipped through the pages slowly at the kitchen table, glasses perched on the bridge of her nose, a cup of black tea growing cold beside her. Heather and Nathan hadn't said a word about filing, of course. They hadn't. This wasn't a conversation, it was a stall. She read the language carefully, vague references to emotional strain, claims about disrupting a multi-generational household, not one mention of the original deed, not a single exhibit attached. No dates, no documents, just drama in legal format. Evelyn opened her laptop and began uploading her counter-response. Exhibit A, the property title listing her as co-owner. Exhibit B, the 30-day notice, certified and time-stamped. Exhibit C, a letter from her attorney summarizing zoning compliance and the legitimacy of her tenant listing. Exhibit D, screenshots from the group chat where Heather confirmed her knowledge of the situation. Exhibit E, photos, her suitcase beside the couch, the blanket with the tag still attached. By noon, Gerald had filed everything electronically. "This won't hold," he said over the phone. "They've given the court a motion." "You've given it fax." 2 days later, a court clerk left a voicemail. "Petition to delay denied, no further action required on your part." Evelyn didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She just folded the voicemail into her mental file of things she'd always known but had to prove anyway. That evening, she sat on the back patio beneath a string of soft white lights Nathan once strung up for a birthday party she was never invited to. Her phone buzzed. A new message. "Malene. Grandma, I heard. I'm sorry. I know they made this harder than it needed to be. I'm proud of you." Evelyn reread it 3 times, the glow of the screen catching the silver lines at the edge of her thumb. Her granddaughter hadn't said, "I love you," but in that moment, proud felt heavier, felt truer. The house, meanwhile, fell into quiet panic. Heather barely spoke, stalking from room to room like a cat trapped in a shrinking box. Delia kept to the master suite, passive-aggressively loud with her packing tape snapping off rolls, drawers slamming, perfume sprayed with unnecessary flourish. Nathan avoided Evelyn entirely until Sunday. She was trimming her lavender on the porch, small clippings in a steel bowl at her side, when the door creaked open and he stepped out, hands in his pockets, eyes unsure. "Mom?" She didn't look up. "Nathan? Can we talk?" Her shears paused mid-snip. "If it's another offer or apology on Heather's behalf, save it. I've heard both, repeatedly." "No," he said quickly. "This one's from me." She set down the bowl. "Go on." I just need to understand. When did this stop being fixable?" She studied him for a long moment, then nodded toward the other chair. "Sit down." He did. Evelyn leaned back slightly, her voice low but measured. "It stopped being fixable the day I was made small in the house I helped build, when silence became expected and gratitude became currency, when I was more welcome as a helper than as a human." Nathan swallowed hard. "I didn't see it that way." "That," she said, "was the first mistake." He looked at his hands. "I don't know how to make it right." "You don't need to make it right. You need to stop defending what was wrong." He nodded slowly, but didn't respond. As he stood, he hesitated. "Would you have lunch with me tomorrow? Just us?" Evelyn narrowed her eyes slightly. The invitation wasn't a trap, but it wasn't an olive branch either. It was something else. Guilt trying to evolve into accountability. She nodded once. "Text me a time." He walked back into the house, not looking over his shoulder. Evelyn reached for the shears again, but didn't cut. Her hands hovered over the stem. The silence that followed didn't feel hollow this time. It felt earned. Nathan asked Evelyn to meet privately. He thought I was overreacting until I laid out the timeline. Nathan was already seated when Evelyn arrived, hunched over a half-empty cappuccino, the foam collapsing like whatever confidence had brought him here. The cafe was quiet, the kind of place where no one raised their voices, where time moved like steam, slow and barely visible. Evelyn chose the seat across from him without asking. She set her tote down gently and pulled out a manila folder, the edges worn from review. Nathan looked at it like it might bite. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, voice low. Evelyn didn't waste time. "You wanted to understand. I brought receipts." She opened the folder and laid out the first item, a printed photo of her suitcase next to the couch, the fleece blanket folded neatly on top, the tag still visible. Nathan blinked. "That's from the first night?" "Day 1, Evelyn replied. "Here's the group text where Heather offered to rotate rooms, 3 weeks after Delia claimed the master." She slid the screenshot toward him. He read it. His jaw shifted slightly. "And here," she said, placing down another sheet, "is the email confirming the title is still in my name. 10 years, Nathan. You never asked to take me off, but you also never treated me like I was on it." He looked up at her now, more fully. "I didn't think it mattered." "That," she said, "is exactly the problem." Evelyn didn't raise her voice. Calmly, she laid out her folder. HOA letters, legal confirmations, even Maline's post. Disrespect is expensive. "When you gave Heather the benefit of the doubt," she said softly, "you asked me to carry silence. When you called my decision extreme, you erased the grace I gave before I drew a line." Nathan sat wordless, shoulders slumped. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." "I know," Evelyn replied. "You didn't mean it. But you let it." She stood, gathering her papers. "You don't have to choose sides. Just stop expecting me to forget mine." He looked up, nodded faintly, and left without a word. Evelyn didn't follow. She sat back down, folded her hands over the folder, and stared out the window as the wind pushed leaves across the sidewalk like unspoken things swept aside. Nathan walks out without saying a word. "They thought I'd fold at the finish line. I was only warming up." The sky on the morning of the 30th day was clear, crisp, and deceptively calm, like it didn't know what had been brewing underneath its blue veneer. Evelyn stood on the front porch at 7:58 a.m. sharp, the lockbox key already in her hand, the sheriff's car idling quietly at the curb. She'd scheduled everything with clockwork precision. At 8 a.m., the locksmith pulled into the driveway, a no-nonsense man in navy coveralls and steel-toe boots. He gave Evelyn a nod and got straight to work. The new deadbolt clicked like punctuation, final, unapologetic. Inside, Heather was pacing barefoot in the hallway, clutching her phone like a lifeline that had stopped working. Delia sat in the living room with her arms crossed, robe pressed and pearls still on, like she planned to protest through posture alone. Nathan was nowhere in sight. The sheriff entered last, clipboard in hand, voice calm. "We're just here to observe, ma'am. As long as it stays civil, there's no issue." Evelyn nodded, her face unreadable. "Civility is all I've ever asked for." At 8:12 a.m., the movers arrived, uniformed, efficient, and unbothered by tension. They carried out Delia's garment racks, vanity mirror, oil diffuser, and 3 bags of skincare products Evelyn hadn't touched but had cataloged in her private notes. Delia stood up, trembling with disbelief. "You're really doing this?" Evelyn didn't look at her. "I already did." Heather stormed into the hallway. "You've turned this into a public spectacle." "The law is public," Evelyn said. "I just brought it home." Delia's voice cracked. "You could have waited until after the holidays? And slept on a couch beside a fake fireplace while you posted family photos in the room I helped pay for?" Evelyn finally met her gaze. "No, I'm done waiting." Heather gestured toward the sheriff. "And you're just letting this happen?" The officer replied evenly. "Everything appears in order. Miss Langston is executing her rights as co-owner. This is not an eviction, it's a lawful re-entry." By 9 a.m., the last box was sealed and wheeled out the door. The air felt lighter, like the walls themselves were relieved. Delia left without saying goodbye. Heather followed, pausing on the porch just long enough to deliver one last line. "You've destroyed everything we built." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "You built a kingdom on borrowed bricks. I just took back my share." Heather flinched, subtle, but it was there. Then she descended the steps and disappeared into the waiting SUV. The mover's van pulled away. The sheriff signed a final form, tipped his hat, and drove off in silence. Evelyn was alone. For the first time in a very long time, it felt like her house again. Evelyn walked the hallway slowly, her fingers grazing the moss-green wall she once painted. She passed the twins' crooked art by the guest bath, paused at the master bedroom, her old room. The door stood ajar. Inside, the bed was stripped, the lavender diffuser gone, but the silence remained. She sat on the mattress, briefly closed her eyes, not to rest, but to reclaim. Then she stood, turned on the lamp, and shut the door behind her with a soft, final click. She didn't take back the house. She took back herself. Then she opened every window. Autumn air rushed in, the curtains lifted, and the house finally breathed again. The master bedroom came next. She stripped the bed bare, removing not just the linens, but everything that had held Delia's presence like fingerprints on glass. She washed the mattress pad twice, added a drop of eucalyptus to the rinse, the scent of fresh beginnings. Then she painted, not to erase what had been, but to reclaim what was hers. A soft ivory hue now wrapped the walls, clean, quiet, timeless. She replaced the chandelier with a brushed brass pendant light, dimmable. On the nightstand, she added a glass bowl filled with smooth river stones and a single sprig of rosemary. Clarity. Each detail was intentional. Nothing overcompensated, it didn't need to. This wasn't about proving anything. It was about inhabiting herself fully again. The knock on the door came at 3:17 p.m. precisely. Her granddaughter Malene, holding 2 paper bags from the tea shop downtown and wearing a hoodie 2 sizes too big. "I brought elderflower and a lemon tart," she said as Evelyn opened the door. "No agenda, just wanted to sit with you." Evelyn stepped aside, smiling softly. "Then come sit." They settled in the sunroom, no longer a battleground of sideways glances and sugar-coated insults, just light, leaves brushing the windows, and the gentle clink of teaspoons. Malene looked around. "It feels different in here." Evelyn nodded. "It is." They spoke of nothing urgent, books, a new show, the cafe's flaky scones. But something steady moved beneath it, a thread of healing that didn't need to be pulled to be real. At one point, Malene paused, spoon midway to her lips. "You don't seem angry." Evelyn stirred her tea. "Anger's a guest. I just didn't invite it to stay." That night, Evelyn prepared her bed in the master suite for the first time. The pillows were firm, the sheets cool and linen crisp. She moved slowly, as if every gesture was a ritual, not for others, for herself. She lit a single candle, unscented. She had nothing to mask now. Climbing under the covers, she adjusted the duvet just once and settled in, arms over the blanket, eyes tracing the soft shadows dancing on the ceiling. No voices, no slammed doors, no couch cushions poking her ribs. She thought of her late husband for a moment, not in grief, but in gratitude. He would have been proud of the boundary she drew, of the line she held when the rest blurred. And then, just as she turned off the light, something tugged at her attention, a sound, soft, hollow, from under the bed. She reached down, fingers brushing cold floorboards until they found cardboard. A small box, neatly tied with ribbon, pale blue and untouched by dust. She pulled it out. Taped to the top was a sticky note in Heather's unmistakable handwriting. "To Delia, Christmas came early." Evelyn stared at the box. It was sealed, heavy, not hers to open, but it was in her home, her room, her floor. She set the box on the foot of the bed and looked at it for a long time, the flicker of the candlelight catching the corner of the ribbon like it was daring her. Because even after you reclaim your house, you never quite know what someone else left beneath it. She finds a gift box under the bed, unopened, addressed to Delia. "They measured me in square footage. I measured them in decency." The box sat untouched for 2 days. Evelyn left it on the dresser, ribbon still tied, the sticky note still fluttering at the corner like a question that didn't deserve an answer. On the 3rd morning, she placed it in a brown paper shopping bag, folded the top neatly, and drove to Heather and Nathan's new rental across town, an uninspired townhouse with aluminum siding and a cracked walkway. She didn't knock. She didn't linger. She set the bag on the front porch, angled toward the door, and walked away. No note, no message, no explanation. Some things she had learned are best returned not out of kindness but out of completion. Back home, she brewed coffee with cinnamon, her way, not Delea's, and sat at the breakfast table with her estate binder open beside her mug. The pages were crisp, the ink permanent. She had removed Heather's name weeks ago. Today she added two beneficiaries: A. Malene Langston, 50% share with education and living stipulations outlined in detail; B. Grace Haven Women's Housing Trust, 50% share, unrestricted use, marked in honor of second chances. She signed her name at the bottom of the page, her pen steady, her hand sure. For the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt like she wasn't just protecting something. She was building something forward. By noon, the sun had climbed high over the backyard garden. The roses had opened, stubborn and radiant, and the rosemary plant she'd trimmed days ago now reached upward like it had something to say. Evelyn stepped outside, wearing a wide-brimmed straw hat and old leather gloves. She took her time, no rushing, no purpose beyond presence. The soil smelled earthy and clean. The breeze carried a faint trace of pine. She moved between beds like a woman unburdened, not because life had gotten easier, but because she'd stopped asking it to be fair. As she knelt by the rosemary, she felt something shift. Not in her bones, but somewhere deeper. A stillness. A release. Her home no longer asked her to defend herself inside its walls. Now, it simply held her. Later, while rinsing dirt from her gloves in the laundry sink, her phone buzzed on the counter. She dried her hands slowly before checking it. A text from Nathan. "We got the box. I understand why you did it that way. I'm sorry it took me this long." She stared at the message. She didn't reply, not because she didn't believe him, but because she finally didn't need the belief to land on her shoulders to count. She powered off her phone and set it upside down on the table. The world could wait. That evening, Evelyn made tea for one. She used her favorite cup, chipped at the rim, but perfect in her hand. She sat on the back steps as twilight took its place, the sky fading to lavender and ash. A cardinal chirped from the fence line, loud and certain. She didn't think of the couch. She didn't think of the fleece blanket. She thought of the countdown and how it had led her back to herself. Not in rage, not in retreat, but in quiet, firm reclamation. She stood, stretched, and walked barefoot across the lawn, her fingers trailing along the tops of the tall grass. No noise, no permission needed, just soil, breath, and enough space to hold her fully. This wasn't revenge, it was return. She gave me a couch. I gave her the countdown.